Hey, what's happening? This is Chris Martinez. I am the host of Operation Agency Freedom. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how do you know if you are paying too much or too little for a team member. Now, I've been in this business for over a decade, and I've met hundreds, if not thousands, of agency owners. And it's a very, very difficult job. I like to say that it's one of the hardest things that you can do. What I have found recently, especially when talking to multiple seven-figure agency owners, is that there's a lot of confusion as to whether or not you're actually doing a good job. Now, there is no handbook about running a marketing agency. And so a lot of the times we are kind of, how do they say it? We're building the plane as we're in the air. I think that's how it goes. And because we don't talk amongst ourselves very often, we have absolutely no idea if we're doing a good job or a bad job. Or I should say, if we're doing things the way that they should be done, or if we're doing things in a very inefficient or stupid way. One of those big things right now, because everybody is on a hiring tear, is that we don't know if we're paying the right salary. So if you have team members and you kind of if you're nodding your head saying, yes, that's how I feel, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. Well, you're definitely going to enjoy this episode because I'm going to specifically talk about how you know whether or not you're paying too much or too little. And then if you're looking to hire as well, obviously this will be very helpful for you. So listen to this entire episode. I think it's going to be a great topic. And for the agency owners that I communicate on a very frequent basis, I know that this is something that they ask quite often. And then at the end of the episode, make sure that you go to our website, check out show notes. I think I'm going to mention a few links in this episode. And then, of course, as always, I ask you, please, pretty please, with a cherry on top, please go and subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll know every time I drop a new episode. So with that being said, let's head over and get to the good stuff. All right. Very excited to talk about this topic today. I put a lot of effort into trying to come up with topics that I think that people will resonate with. And a lot of the times I miss the mark. And sometimes you guys surprise me because there's something that I thought that was kind of boring or lame or that everybody knew. And that ends up being the episode that everybody goes crazy over. So this one in particular, it's been a progress, right? Me coming up with this specific topic because I get asked a lot of questions, and I don't consider myself to be like a business genius. I think a lot of the things that I've learned, I have been through my failures, and I failed so many times. I probably fail every single day. And also from the mentors that I've been able to communicate with over the years. Some of these mentors just came about by chance. And some of these mentors, we met through a group and just developed a friendship. Some of these mentors don't even know that they are my mentors, but there's so much knowledge to be gained just by making connections with people who are a few steps ahead of you. So one of the things that I've learned from communicating with agency owners, especially those agency owners in that, seven-figure, early multiple seven-figure range, is that there's just a general sense of confusion, I would say, as to whether or not you're doing the things that you need to be doing. I personally have felt many, many times, and I still feel this very frequently. I feel like there are things that other people know that I just don't know, because I don't necessarily when I meet really successful, quote unquote, agency owners and I talk to them, I'm usually not blown away by their intelligence, and that's happened to me many times over. It's rare that I'll meet somebody and I'll just be like, this is like an Elon Musk level intelligence human being that's running this, 8-figure agency. A lot of the times I feel like they're just like me, just like us. They just know a few things that I don't know. And granted, everybody has different opportunities and, so there's some level of that as well. But when it comes to an intelligence standpoint, I can't even think of anybody, honestly, that I've met in the agency space that is just so unbelievably brilliant that I know that they're just operating at a much, much higher level intellectually than I am. So the reality is that there are things that you don't know that other people know. And that's one of the things that's holding you back. And so you got to continue to learn and always improve yourself. Specifically for today's talk, I'm going to talk about the issue of paying too little or paying too much for team members, because there's some element of financial knowledge that you have to have around this. There's leadership, obviously. And then there's just general best practices, which I think apply to every single business that's, on the planet today. So the first thing that we got to know is how much should we be paying? Right. So that's kind of like the first step. So my recommendation, especially in today's market, is to pay as much as you possibly can. Well, how much can you pay? So if you've heard me talk about kind of the general financial metrics that you should be looking at. So for performance or production labor, you want to keep that COGS around 30%. So that will dictate, like your budget will dictate how much you can pay. That's a fantastic starting point, if nothing else. But the bottom line is that because it's so unbelievably competitive in today's job market, you want to try and pay as much as you possibly can for the perfect person. So, like that's the number one thing. So like you can do that, like how much should you be paying or what is the market paying? Like you can go to Indeed and kind of look at the salaries that other people are offering. You can look at some of your competitors, and very often they'll have a careers page on their website. And if they're smart, they'll list the salary range for the candidates. And that'll kind of give you a sense as to what the market salaries are going to be. Now, keep in mind that if you're looking to hire an in-house team member, depending on your geography, you might have to pay more. So for example, if you live in San Francisco or San Diego, which are like the most expensive places on earth, or Manhattan, if you need people to come into the office, or if you can only hire in that geo, you're going to have to pay more. It's just the way that it is. Like it's so expensive to live there. It drives up the cost of hiring folks. So take that into consideration. Now, on the flip side, if you can hire remotely, which I highly recommend that you do, you can hire in places where the cost of living is less. So the market salary, like if your agency is in New York, and let's say you need an account manager, and the going rate for an account manager is $130,000 a year, you might be able to find candidates that are qualified in other parts of the country that are willing to and actually want to work remote. And instead of having to pay 120, 130, you could probably get away with paying 70 to 80, right? And you save yourself $50,000, which is pretty nice. And that way you're paying top of the market, but you're paying top of the market for where that individual lives. So that's something else that you need to consider. So like maybe your budget dictates that you can't afford 120. Now to find the right person, all you have to do is just find a remote person in a cheaper location. You're still going to get the same talent level. If you have the right systems and processes, they'll be able to operate remotely just as well, or if not better as if they were in the office. So that's not going to ding you at all. So that's the first thing, is like, how much should we spend, right? Or what do we have in the budget? And then that will ultimately dictate where you can look for those people. The next thing that you want to look at is the hiring process in general. You want to make sure that you have the right people that are evaluating team members during the hiring process. A lot of the times if you're the owner, that's not going to be you. And that's a very hard pill to swallow. I had to learn that. The reason why I think that agency owners, especially agency, like if you have more than 10, 20 team members, like it doesn't really make sense for you to be in the hiring process, in my opinion, and in my experience. The reason is because we bring a lot of biases to the hiring process itself. We're typically more optimistic. We typically will see things in people and think, oh man, I can turn that person into this A player. And a lot of the times we're misguided in our judgment. It's happened to me so many times. Every jerk that we ever hired, I hired them once I got out of the hiring process, and I let other team members do it. We had better people, just plain and simple. I was the problem on that. And a lot of the times, if you're the owner and you're not getting the right people and you're part of the interview process, that's why. But you also need to make sure that you have the right people. If you're not in the interview process, you want to make sure that you have the right people that are actually doing the interviews. Somebody who's technical, somebody who understands the company culture, their direct manager, have multiple people in that interview and hiring process. Okay. Next thing is the job title itself. So I'm going to point out something right now that's happening all across the United States, is that everybody's looking for an account manager, but there is no standard for what an account manager does. When I look at some of the job descriptions for these account managers, they're actually not account managers. They're more like customer experience representatives, or they're more like project managers. The reason I bring this up is that the job title alone could raise the rate that you need to pay. The job title right now for account manager, salaries have never been higher. They've like doubled or tripled over the past 2 years. So you really need to be clear as to what is the actual job responsibility for this individual. And can I potentially change the title, still find the people that I'm looking for, but save a lot of money on the salaries? It's just the way that it is. Certain job titles command a higher salary. It doesn't make any sense, but that's just the way that it is. So I would highly recommend that you look at the actual responsibilities of that person and see if we can actually find the same person under a different title, and then therefore also be able to reduce the salary a bit. And that will help you fit within the budget. So my next tip is when you're looking for that individual, and let's say that right now you don't have the budget to be able to pay that person what you want to be able to pay them, a great solution for that is to tier their pay. So here's an example. We have project managers that we pay, and when they start off, we don't give them 10 clients right off the bat, because we know that that puts them in a position to fail. It's a lot. It's way too much for them to learn in the first few months. So what we do is we give them a couple clients to learn how to manage, and their pay is lower. And then after that, we give them a couple more clients, and then their pay goes up a little bit. And then we'll give them a couple more clients, and then their pay will probably reach the peak. So within anywhere from 3 to 6 months, they're making that bigger salary, but also they've taken on a lot more responsibility. Now, what does that allow me to do? That allows me to go out and sell a lot more, which will then in turn pay for that individual and the salary that they're looking to make. So if you recognize that the market dictates you need to pay more, and your budget dictates that I don't have the ability to pay that, you can create a tiered pay structure based on performance that will allow that individual to learn and grow into that position, and also give you the ability to work it into the budget so you can go out and sell a lot more. You definitely want to make sure that you have specific benchmarks laid out. So number of clients is an easy one, but you need those specific benchmarks so that everybody knows what they need to do, what the team member needs to do, and then you know how you're going to measure that so that you can then give those bonuses. Do not dangle that carrot and not pay. You have to have it very, very clear. The other thing that you can do if you feel like you're paying too little is you can add in bonuses. So performance bonuses is a great thing to do. Retention, that's an easy one. If you hit a certain retention goal, then you can give the person bonuses. And then the other one is perks. So working from home is actually a big perk, as I mentioned earlier on this episode. If you give the person the ability to work from home, they're thinking, man, I don't have to sit in traffic for an hour. I'm going to save a lot of money on gas, which is a huge deal right now. And, I feel like I work better at home, so I'm just going to be in a happier mood. Or maybe they have kids, so they can go pick up the kids every day or 3 times a week, something like that. That is massively appealing to a candidate, right? I personally don't want to have to go into the office every single day. I don't come into the office every day. I own the place. I don't have to go into the office every day. But if I'm a team member and I'm looking at my quality of life, and my quality of life is going to improve because I don't have to go into the office, then I would consider taking a lower salary because it's just going to make me a happier person. The next thing that you can do, and this is typically only for very, very strategic team members or C-level team members, is going to be that you can give them equity. So you can give them a piece of the company, and then they look at that as for most employees, they're going to look at that man, this is amazing. They really trust me. Obviously, if the company does better, then I'll do better. Or if we sell one day, then I'm going to get a little chunk of that. So you could give a small, equity under 5% typically. And basically that also creates some ownership with them. So they will fight like hell for that little 3 to 5%. I've seen it happen. And you might not think it's anything, but that's another way that if you feel like you're paying too little, then you might be able to entice somebody with a little bit of equity if they're the right team member, only if they're the right team member. Okay. So the bottom line is that if you feel like you're paying too little, you do need to make sure that you have the right margins, because if you're looking at what everybody else is paying and you're like, man, I just cannot afford those rates, guess what? You are charging too little, most likely. There's a lot of inefficiencies, or your gross margins are out of control, or whatever. You should have the budget to be able to raise the salaries a few percentage points, and it really doesn't hurt you that much. Or you should be able to offer higher rates than what you're paying now to amazing team members and not really have to think twice. So that's really, really important. Now, just to really quickly address if you're paying somebody too much, this goes back to job descriptions. And if team members are expected to hit certain benchmarks, or they're supposed to hit certain KPIs or goals, and they're not hitting those goals, guess what? You're paying them too much. Like if their pay is contingent on those goals and they're consistently not hitting the goals, then you probably have the wrong person and you're probably paying them too much. So that's a much easier problem to solve. And then the only other thing that you can do is just have a conversation with them, lay all the cards on the table, have them look at the facts and the data and recognize, yeah, you're right, I'm not hitting my mark. And so you can change their pay structure. I would probably create an incentive-based program where they have a decent base salary, where they're not struggling to pay rent, but the majority of their like free money or fun money is going to come from that incentive. So that's probably what I would do. Now, bottom line is you just have to keep in mind that not everybody is motivated by money. Most of the time, you, the owner, you're not motivated by just money, right? Let's say you have a hobby that you love doing, fishing, for me, it's jujitsu or soccer, and somebody offered you $1 million and you would never be able to go fishing again. For me, I would never be able to go play jujitsu or play soccer. Would I take the $1 million? Absolutely not. It's not about the money. There's a balance, right? So it's the same with your team members. So you just need to keep in mind that whatever incentive program you're creating for them, it's typically not just about the money. The money is important. Absolutely, the money is important, but it's typically not just about the money. I'd love to hear any thoughts or comments that you have about this. So just shoot me a note on social media or whatever, and hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could share it with your friends, family, and basically anyone who will find the same value in this episode that you did. And to get the latest from me, then let's definitely connect on social media. You can go to Facebook, facebook.com/Dude Agency, or Instagram @dudeagency.io, or you can check us out on YouTube on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, you can always visit our website at dudeagency.io, where you can see all of our other episodes of Operation Agency Freedom. You can also register for any live trainings that we have going on how to run a highly profitable agency. And of course, you can see how we help digital agencies with the people, the processes, and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.